Welcome back to the main stage at Event Tech Live USA Canada 2021. We're almost ready for our final session on the main stage, but before we get that under the way, just a little plug for the final session over on the Omni stage. That begins in 5 minutes time with Harlan Davis, VP of Production at GDS Group, looking at how COVID killed the webinar star. And over now to our last session on the main stage. C2 International is known as one of the most forward-thinking conveners of communities, both live and digital. Before we introduce our panel, let's take a look at one of the many global events that C2 International is behind. And before we meet our panel from C2 International, we must first of all meet our chair, who's going to be coordinating the next 45 minutes or so of discussion. I'm delighted to say that for the first time and in our last session of Event Tech Live USA Canada 2021, we welcome Nick Borelli, Director of Marketing Growth at All Seated. Nick, a very good evening to you and welcome to Event Tech Live.
Thanks, James. You've done a brilliant job this week. I can't believe it's like 11 o'clock where you're at right now and your energy level is still like up here. That's pretty amazing.
It's very kind of you to say, Nick. It's great to see you again. As I said, it's taken 3 days to actually get you on air as part of Event Tech Live, but we really appreciate you stepping in and sharing this session with the guys from C2 International. We saw that great video there to kick off this particular session. I'm now going to hand over to you. You can introduce your guests, and I'll see you a little bit later on with some questions.
Sounds good. Okay, well, I'm excited to welcome team members right off the bat today from C2, including Heather Rosenthal, who's the VP of Digital Business Transformation. Welcome. Julia Saborin. My English is barely good.
It's horrid,
let alone any others. Yeah, it's not great. And you're the VP of Marketing and Audience. And Anik Beaulieu, you are the VP of Growth and Partnerships. Welcome. How are you enjoying where you're at in your cycle this year? Is this like a downtime, an uptime? Where's your energy right now?
Well, you know, I think we're at the stage of the year where we've just finished delivering one of our biggest events for one of our clients. So we're in this middle stage between coming down from the delivery high and looking forward to what the other half of the year has for us.
Yeah, that's a unique aspect to our industry, is the fact that we have this ebb and flow of energy, you know, that of planning, preparing, anticipation, anxiety, relief. It's a roller coaster that we put ourselves on, you know, over and over again, that if you talk to people outside of what we do, they don't get it. I find, at least. So it's nice to, you know, be around people that understand that and where you're coming from, as everyone who's watching right now probably does. Okay, so the first question I had, I wanted to start off with one of the hardest questions you could possibly ask somebody in the events industry. One of the ones that probably has the most ambiguity, and probably with the right inspiration could really infuse organizations with something that could, you know, change the way that they play the game. So my question is, how do you go about setting expectations with your clients on tangible results for their events? The tangible part is hard. Who has an idea? Audio?
Can you guys hear me?
Nick probably.
Oh,
yeah,
now we can.
I think Nick has ideas.
I'll take this one. Thanks for the intro, and Nick, it's great to be here with you guys, everybody. Always nice to see some industry folks. I think we've had such a challenging year that, you know, I feel the industry has come together more than ever, and we're just really glad to be here with you guys to talk about what went on for us this year. And I think I'm going to start with a little anecdote, because for sure we want to set expectations for clients, but I think this year was a year where empathy was really important, because we were all going through so much change. Clients on their side needed to change all their programs, reinvent the way they were going to convene their communities. We all had challenging times with staffing. We needed to reskill. Us on the agency side, like we needed to shift from live productions that were going on 2 months and 2 months all over the world to all of a sudden needing to cancel venues, reimagine the way we would continue doing business. And I think this was a moment where client relationships that are almost more like partnership became really important, because there was so much uncertainty and no warranties, right? And the story I'm going to tell was really touching for us, because after 2 months of like reorganizing, downsizing, canceling, I have a client who's a really good, kind of became a friend because we've been doing business together for a while. And, we're thinking about reorganizing what we're going to do. And she said to me, you know what, Anik, maybe you don't know right now what it is that you guys will do, but you reinvented the game when it was live, and you will find the way to do it digitally. Here's the finance to pull on an event, and 6 months from now, I don't even need you to tell me what the event will be like. Just use this as a token to spark like creativity, and just, you guys should just go at it. And I think that there are moments where it's just not about having everything figured out. It's having the landscape, or having the, I'm sorry, I'm French Canadian, right? So maybe I'm not using all the right words sometimes. But I think sometimes it's about having the conditions that will enable you to find solutions. And I think there's a bunch of stuff that we came to realize afterwards. We were always really big in telling stories. So leveraging events as like peak engagement moments that enabled communities to gather pre, during, and post. And Julia's going to talk about that later. And the beauty with digital is that we can now measure more precisely the full continuum of engagement, where we would have a little gap sometimes. Like, of course, we'd have live event data, attendance, session, heat maps, but it was hard to link everything together. And I think that digital allowed us to tell a more comprehensive story to our clients. And I think in terms of expectations, to me, the most difficult thing this year has been the expectations around leveraging events for sales. Like C2 Montreal, we have impact of like over 700 millions a year, like, and just business being done because of the way we designed the event. And when we look at a lot of our clients, they were looking at us to design these smart hosting, high-end experiences that really enabled them to forge relationship and have, at the end of the day, business coming out of it. And this, I find, has been one of the hardest things this year, which is like, how do you actually leverage events to continue building those relationships that are going to keep the business flowing,
If I can add to a little.
What a client. Sorry. I was just going to say that's what a secret to have rockstar clients as, one of the most powerful things that you can have. I mean, obviously they gravitate towards you, for who you are as well. But I think everyone should really think about that when you're thinking about what you need, to be successful, to be creative, to, to get to the next level in change and disruption. It's, you have to have those great relationships. Sorry.
And at the end, this was kind of like a startup investment, because they bought it for not a lot of money, and we ended up like needing to really kind of invest in it. So, but at the end I was happy, because I was like, look, you gave us what we needed at that time, and you are reaping the benefits. So it was a win-win.
Smart all around. You were going to say, sorry, I cut you off before. I was just blown away. Clients like that always inspire me as well.
Yeah, I think at C2 we're really fortunate, and Anik and her team have done such a great job of maintaining those relationships, and also I think it's a testament to sort of the KPIs that we delivered against in the past. And one of the challenges that we faced in terms of managing expectations with clients this year was as we know, the beauty of digital is data, but that also becomes a blessing and a curse, because in so many ways, all that data can sometimes drown and overwhelm people. So we also had to learn to articulate, to explain what that data meant and how it correlates to business KPIs. And as I'm sure many people on the call today listening to us know, is that when you're deploying a digital event, all of a sudden you have all these new metrics that are available. You know, the granularity around dwell time and attendance just becomes exponential versus sort of the data that we had for live events. And how do we use that to help tell the story of our success and also help empower some of the decisions that we make with our clients? But there's like a huge learning curve to that, you know? So I think it's setting us up for future success and the evolution of our business, but it also in many ways can work against us, because all of a sudden you have like this overwhelming data set that you have to work with, and it's part of the challenges as we're all going to be facing moving forward.
Yeah, it's the Wild West right now when it comes to that, unfortunately. We don't have universal data sets that the industry is really relied on. In marketing, when it went digital, 10, 15 years ago, it had that period of time too where things were like, well, as long as we have a lot of Facebook likes, our company is doing well. And it's like those things didn't really cool off and turn into what they would for a little bit of time. And we're in that same space now, I think, where you're looking at different data sets as your source of truth, but the reality is that there is a lot of interpretation until we as an industry kind of coalesce on what we believe the universal data sets should be. And I think everyone who is playing in this field right now, like we're all explorers trying to determine that. But the good news is, as long as we base it on ROI and we have transparency with our clients, I think we're in a good place to create those things together.
And I think
so,
Nick, also,
oh, sorry.
Just to wrap up on this, and then I'm done. But I think also like it kind of, in my opinion, broke silos, because live events were often handled by teams that are different than like digital marketing or performance marketing. And all of a sudden, you were able to link what you're doing from an events perspective with the ROI that's going to be linked to that, to the whole marketing suite. And that to me was something really interesting, because I felt it was a challenge sometimes to get more investment poured into live events, because we couldn't bridge the gap between what is happening now during the event and then how it's going to live on different channels. And for us, like we invest in environment design and we create those amazing settings so that the story, but it felt that why would you invest in these beautiful environments when it's like, so I think the conversation might be easier going into the future.
Yeah, it's a great point. I mean, I years and years of trying to get people in sales and marketing silos to understand that investment in F&B and decor and things like that have a tangible result on their bottom line. But as soon as you start speaking about things like impressions and time spent, as long as it's analogous to Google Analytics, all of a sudden they're like, oh, we get this, as much money as you want. And I think that maybe if we can, show them that, a set design is equivalent to a UX. I think if we have some kind of conversation around bridging that gap, and maybe virtual or digital events are sort of that in between. It's interesting. Speaking of, one of the things that came up a lot in what you were both saying was the idea of we're in this era of change. And we all had to weather change, and how empathy is so important. I mean, it's the first step in design thinking, and empathy is just, it's around all the time, but it's so much more important in times of change. So we're defining new terms and opportunities. We're testing these boundaries now. So along those lines, my question is, what do you think can be accomplished in virtual events, the ones we were just talking about, just as well as they have been in person? And then what do you think can't be?
That's a great question. I'll take this one. I think delivering keynotes and speakers, audience engagement, that does well in digital. That's an easy transfer. It has been an easy transfer for us in terms of building those experiences. I think what is a challenge is building those spontaneous moments, those magical moments, those interactions with people who you just happen to run into. And there's a lot of networking approaches to it. There's a lot of different tools and technologies, but it's really about how you define that experience. And that's one of those areas where I think we've been doing some experimentation. We're continuing to do some experimentation, but that's a tough one to relive online at this point in time. Technology is coming along right now that's kind of bringing us some interesting premises that we're going to be testing out in our next event. But ultimately, that is one of the key differences to me between that in-person magic and what you can do magically digitally and do that well.
Mm-hmm. Sort of to add maybe to what Heather's saying, like, we know that online, the notion that content is king survives well. And people do have those habits of consuming content online. And the online event allows us to deploy video on demand functionalities so people can kind of watch at their leisure and engage at their leisure, and chatting and commenting. These are all things that most people are used to using, be it through social media or just quite frankly through Netflix. So all of those constructs actually work really well, and be it emojis or whatnot during the conference really also allow us to capture what people are feeling sort of live. So we've really seen huge successes with that. But all the serendipitous moments of us engaging in person, picking up your coffee in between sessions and meeting someone completely that you'd have never crossed any other moment in life, and creating great business relationships or great friendships or great collaborations, that's harder to capture. And I think as an organization, we're tasked right now with exploring all of the possibilities of what the future of that could be online, and also what the future of that could be in a hybrid world where we're going to be bringing people back to a physical experience, but also having this digital online experience that's going to continue to coexist along with us.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with the ladies here. I think for me, there were great synergies and possibilities that we found with digital, right? A lot more reach, possibility to bring extremely, great speakers for a far bigger audience. The fact that we don't have to have those speakers travel, that in itself is great access. I think the biz dev angle, that, that meeting the people doing business, it's even having a glass of wine after a day of like amazing content and bumping into that person and having the opportunity to continue building in more of an organic way, I think is really what's harder. We find some cool ways to do it. And I think the next generation too might be different. They were raised on social, so maybe they have a different perspective around that. So that's going to be interesting. And then it's going to be about phygital. How do you meet someone digitally when you're on site? How do you create those cool interactions between the two worlds? And thankfully, we're starting to have a lot of demand, like even for the fall, for physical or digital, or not digital, but phygital events, which is, it's exciting. I think this is kind of the next generation of cool stuff that's going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it seems like for face-to-face, now we're all looking at it from a different lens, because we've had, we've kind of gone without. So we've seen where the holes are potentially, and there's some areas where I don't think we were necessarily thinking of as our greatest strengths. Like I've been thinking about the hallway now. The hallway is one of the most important things for the live event, and we didn't put it up on its pedestal before because it was, it's not where you spend a lot of your time planning. You pay a lot of money to have keynote speakers and organize a lot of people to go in different ways, but it's those serendipitous bump in moments that I've been hearing about missing for the last year plus that have been really rising to the top. It's exciting when we go back to that. I think the things that we took for granted we might look at differently, and it's exciting to also see like technologies trying to figure out things that we didn't really even know needed to be figured out. It's like oh yeah, go on.
I was going to say, if I can add something, I think one of the things that needs to stay is that the digital event has allowed us to really extend the storytelling. with an in-person event, it's very ephemeral. It pops up, it happens. We all converge on a location. We all have these amazing moments. We meet in the hallway. We attend a great keynote, and then we all disperse and go back to our bubbles. But online, things exist for much longer, so you can go back to that content and consume it again, or check that connection that you made in the chat, or even from a storytelling capacity, we can deepen the storytelling that we do before, during, and even after event to create much more sustain to how we connect to our communities. So, I think the hallway analogy is important for how in a live event we have to refocus our energies on enhancing those ceremonies.
I think, is it just me or?
No, I think we lost the sound there.
Okay. But I think you,
actually, I think
you're, oh, okay.
Are you back?
Sorry. Oh yeah, you dipped out a little bit after you brought up the hallway analogy. Sorry.
Oh, damn. I swear the internet is not our friend. I'm really looking forward to going back to live events, if only for the internet to work again.
I know. Imagine if we just freeze, in the middle of a face-to-face.
I think it's an important point that Julia just raised, because I know what she was, what the continuation of that story was, is one of the differences that digital has given us is it's taken us away from that one-time event, and it's building that community and that continuity of engagement and the storytelling. And so that's kind of a very different prospect in terms of the event industry and it's very much kind of the C2 DNA is we are about communities and community building. And so the transition to digital, and then when we look at phygital, is perfect. Because you have both the event, but then you have the ecosystem of the digital world continuing throughout the course of the year. And so I think it's a really interesting time. COVID forced a lot of change, dramatic change, obviously, in this industry. And I think in some respects, positive change once we got through the pain, but some really positive and interesting changes.
Yeah, it's true. Definitely, there was definitely pain and growth. Sorry.
Yes.
No, and if you think about it, we hadn't seen that much innovation for a long time in the industry. And now we were all forced to be humble and start thinking about what the future would look like without having that safety net. And I think it just provided the opportunity to experiment, to innovate, and to start taking best practices from different kind of industries. I mean, Julia's from the media industry, others from like technology and digital transformation. I mean, it's magical, and that's kind of what brings a certain level of innovation and excitement in the industry. And I think we won't go back, and that's a great thing. It's like it all forced us to step up and not expect that the status quo would even be possible to maintain. So at some point, I think it's showing us the best of what we can do. It's bad, and we suffered, and people lost their jobs, and it was hard for a lot of people. But at the same time, for an industry, I think it was maybe what we needed to step our game up a bit,
Yeah, it's definitely going to create some evolution, which that's kind of what I'm really curious to hear about, individually, just as kind of a way to have empathy with those who are watching and also maybe some inspiration. How do you think you view your skill sets currently as they have maybe changed a bit after going through last year? Did they broaden? Did you pull on things that in your past, like you mentioned, where you all potentially came from? I'm curious to hear like how your skill sets, as you envision them now, like where they are in this time period. Whoever would like to start, whoever has the most exciting story.
I think for me it's an interesting. Yeah. I think I'm somewhat different than my peers. Is I came from a digital and a technology and transformation world, so the event industry was actually new to me. which probably caused a lot of my peers pain. And it was a learning curve for me. But so what I did was I took my knowledge of digital and transformation, which is not really actually just about technology. It's really about processes and structures and innovation, and applied it into the world of the event industry. And so I think I come a little bit different from the experiences of my peers. And so I'd be curious to hear, Julia or Anik, like your thoughts on that.
I think for myself, I had spent 15 years in the media business and lived a digital transformation firsthand. I worked for a print magazine that became an online website, iPad, tablet, app, you name it. So I felt that I had to kind of go back into my baggage and relive digital transformation all over again, which was exciting and scary at the same time. So I think that I probably had the benefit of kind of knowing a little bit what this road was going to look like, but at the same time, we did it at such an accelerated speed. Media transformation took 5 to 10 years, to shift to a digital model with pure play players, and it was quite traumatic. And it was an industry that was completely transformed and almost left as a small shadow of what it once was. I feel that in our industry, it's going to be quite the opposite, is that the digital transformation is going to give us new tools to find even more inventive ways to convene people. So for myself, I felt that it was falling back into perhaps comfortable shoes around what digital transformation means and how you have to kind of check your ego at the door, because once you're put in the hands of technology, it moves much faster than you do. So you kind of have to you have to embrace it, and you just have to know that you're never going to master it. It's going to master you. So you kind of just got to go with the flow. So I think for me, that was a big part of this experience. And I look forward to the continued challenge that technology will give us.
Yeah, I think for me, it's a bit different because I come from real estate. So there's not a lot of digital there. But I guess, I think for me it was more about those soft skills, ability to change and manage change, navigating the unknown, having resilience, being, a good person to like a better listener. It's like people were living so much stuff at their home, with their kids, scared of being sick. So it kind of, I think we had to all kind of become superhuman in some way, because, and also like seriously, events in the street during a pandemic, it's like, here goes your security. There's a lot of things that were just, that just necessitated us, I think, to become better. But also discover like courage, right? Like that safety net I was talking about earlier. And then just also, I think it brought up from more of a team perspective, the necessity to reskill, but also have the people with the right mindset, people that were in it for the team, people that, were willing to adapt quickly. From a sales perspective and a biz dev perspective, I was like, wow, I need some really sharp thinkers here, because the product doesn't exist. So we need to convince and build and be really close to the tech team and the marketing team and the creative teams, so that we keep the pulse on exactly what it is that, we're going to propose our client, get the feedback. It's like the loop was accelerated. And I think like people that did well were having like qualities of like entrepreneurship,
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, what I'm hearing from everyone is that it just required a real flexible mindset and a real less on the specialization of your skill and more about what was above that. The ability to draw from previous experiences and the ability to basically conform to whatever shape you're in that day, be it only digital or hybrid or whatever it is. It seems like we have to be a lot more like water and conform to a glass than we were before, where we were, a little bit more rigid because we had the luxury of specialization. Because we had an ascent of an industry and it was comfortable and it was only going to get better. And then we had the rug pulled out under us, and what was left was this kind of equal, place, this democratized, starting from square one to see who really has true creativity and who is figured out a way to, just manipulate one thing that they learned how to do. I think James might be back. Are we going into Q&A, or do we have one more question? Or if not, I have one more I was just really curious about, was, and maybe if we're running out of time, just how you think your design searching. Sure. How your changes, I guess, into your design that are coming. Like, do you feel that you're going to approach design differently in this year?
I think so. I would say most certainly is it's really taking that digital first approach, right? And as we move back to in person, it's that digital approach, and what's that going to look like? So I think you're going to see some interesting things. There's a lot of new interesting technologies as well that are enabling and bridging the in-person and the physical. So we're definitely looking at how are we going to leverage those technologies to improve the networking experience, to improve those serendipitous moments, and to relive that. And but I think very much how we've evolved this past year is we came out of the crisis, we delivered on our event, and we've really developed our chops in terms of digital. And now it's how do we approach these events somewhat differently, and always looking at this as a community, as not a time-based event. And so I think there's going to be some interesting things coming out of the teams this year.
Yeah, if I can add to what Heather said, I think it's taking that digital first approach that's going to be critical, and we're starting to see how our teams are moving in that direction. Like, I think you mentioned, Nick, this notion of being like water. You see the teams are starting to become more and more that way. So on our own journey of transformation as an organization, we weren't thinking digital first in October of 2020. We just didn't have it in us because we were in survival mode. And now, 8 months later, our teams are there. Their ideas that they're bringing to the table, the way that they're ideating around creativity and experience and even content, are really demonstrating that that's going to be the driving force of how we respond to an online need, but then also understanding how we go back to basics in the in-person side, and we ensure that we enhance what made in-person so important and special.
That's interesting. So do you think that moving forward, the expectation from the attendee is going to be in the face-to-face space specifically, is going to be on the things that they were missing? Or do you think that they're going to recognize that as obvious? Does that make sense? Like some of the things that there's been a vacuum of over the last year, are they going to really, crave that? So you're disproportionately going to maybe, weigh your designs for the face-to-face with more of those functionalities?
Well, I mean, for sure, there's going to be a bit of a ripple effect where people are going to want to meet one another. I mean, I think this is going to be a reality. But I think that we're also going to look at maybe a bit of a deeper transformation in terms of what is a digital event? What is a live event? How do we invest in live experiences? Is it for smaller groups but higher end? Is it localized? Is it a multiple? Because we're talking about community building, and I think that's where we really thought a lot at C2 this year, and how can we almost have this network approach where it's maybe a series of small pop-up experiences linked through a very sophisticated digital infrastructure. So for sure, I mean, I think people are just going to look for that in-person connection, but then I think it's going to become really exciting around the innovation and the formats. and why live and why digital, like at the core?
Yeah, to add to what Anik's saying, I think the table stakes are going to change of our industry. I think, once you are touched by what digital can bring, you can't go back in the past, but you also want to evolve to what the in-person is going to bring in the future. So there's going to be some things that people are going to expect as a basic offering because that's what digital gives you. Like, they're going to want to watch stuff on demand most likely because that's where the world sits, But then they're also going to want to have those incredible networking spaces physically where they can connect with people. So I think the baseline of what an event, be it in person or online or hybrid, are going to have to offer are going to, like, the ante is going to be upped tremendously, and the expectation is going to evolve. And digital did that in media. All of a sudden, people wanted gorgeous print magazines and they wanted everything online too, all connected to their social media. So that's going to be something that's going to impact our industry and just kind of change what that baseline is going to look like moving forward.
Yeah, I'm happy to see, like, once the rubber band snaps the other way, I can see the push pull. So, like, right now, I think we know what direction we're going in, and it's going to, people are going to run to the thing that they've missed. And then after that, they're going to run back to the thing that they, were actually really liking in the digital. And then, that wave is going to hopefully settle into some middle ground where we determine really the best of one world, the best of the other world, and then where the overlapping tissue is. To me, that's the most exciting bit, is when we actually, start shaking this stuff out. Let's dig into definitions of why, just like you said, why digital, why face-to-face. Probably the most important question we have coming up in the next few years, I think. Asking that question: does this need to be a face-to-face event? Does this need to be a virtual event? Does this need to be a little bit of both? Can this be extended? Can this be a 365? And also, is there a little bit of this that we could add in here? I just think that we have twice as many ingredients to make things as we used to. And that's the most exciting thing. I mean, the blandness maybe of the food that we've had, to stretch the analogy to its absolute limit, we didn't even know. We had, like, wherever James is, we had British cooking before. No, I don't want to slight the fine cuisine of England. But we have more spices now, and that's exciting to me. Is those people like that you have in your team that are the modular thinkers, who have the ability, now that they've been given these more ingredients, and now that they've have the ability to see things differently, they're going to create recipes. I'm really stretching this, that have never been created before, because we're going to have all of the pieces that we could possibly have. So. Very cool.
We're getting us
curious to see
Nick.
Yeah, I know. It's that time of, for us, at least on the Eastern, stateside and Canadian side time zone. We're both in the same time zone, and it's definitely dinner time. The work from home life of myself, I also know that dinner is happening directly below me. So, talking about the challenges of this new environment, how do you deal with that? But very cool. Well, I'm curious to hear if we have, like, the Q&A coming up, because I wanted to see if we gave the opportunity for those who are participating to weigh in. Okay. Apparently that's coming up, but not quite yet. So in that instance, let's talk about what's next. What do you see that is maybe the biggest challenge in the way in the face of the industry currently for getting to the next level? So before, maybe it was technology adoption. I think we've gone over that hurdle, right? So especially with, like, data, we were finding people that weren't wholesale using data as much as they could be, and now I think they're on board with that. What's the next big challenge as far as what's going to get us to the next level? This is just all guesses at this point. Budget.
Yeah, but I think budgets are going to be hard, because when you look at digital, like, everybody thought, oh, it's going to be cheaper. Yeah, no, it's not really. And now we're talking, add on the layer of phygital, right? Because now it's going to be live and digital. So are we going to get the resources like financially that we need, and how we're going to tie it all back to ROI? I mean, this I think will be challenging for organizations.
Yeah, I mean, so it really, do you think it comes down to us being creative and in creating new opportunities for revenue that had not existed before? Because I feel like more logo placement isn't going to cut it.
No. No, I think it wasn't cutting. It wasn't cutting it first. Like, I think a lot of the experiences needed to be reinvented, like partnerships as well. So yeah, you're right, Nick.
Yeah, I think we need to start looking at integrating partners with integrity in new ways. And that's something that digital is going to open up for all of us and potentially give us more revenue. So,
love that. James,
Nick,
how's it going?
and panel, great, thank you. I've just been wrapping up on one of our other stages with the final session over on the Omni stage, and funnily enough, somebody who'd actually broken away from their own studio, and they're in the middle of their own event, and they've dashed back to do that. So I've stepped across here. Nick, I've got a couple of questions that I'd like to put to the panel. Yeah, absolutely, yeah. If I could put the questions to you, and then you can perhaps field them into the panel as you see fit. Let's go over to Glyssa. Has C2 considered the carbon reduction and green benefits of running virtual hybrid events? I think I heard earlier there was talk about being able to bring in speakers and guests without the need to those travel costs that are associated with. But of course, there's the green reduction and the carbon benefits of running virtual and hybrid as well. Is that something the guys have considered?
Yeah, I mean, we always considered it. We were named one of the greenest events in America when we were doing First C2 Montreal, our flagship. And our head of creation has a master's degree in sustainability, actually. So that's definitely something that we're incorporating in our practices, the way we produce. Yeah, so it's always top of mind. But just the travel we're not doing, I feel, is helping.
Yeah, I feel like I'm contributing to that myself by not flying out as much as I used to.
Nick, I've got one more question. I've just got an eye on the clock here, and I want to get a couple more questions, hopefully into the guys before we wrap up. What about hologram technology to bring speakers without making them flying in? We've looked at some of the hologram technology. In fact, in one of the sessions earlier on today, I think Vivian Chan from Next Tech AR was discussing some of this stuff. Is it something that C2 have explored, the hologram technologies?
We haven't necessarily explored the hologram technologies, but we've actually been exploring several different options. And so we just had an interesting couple of weeks where we've been looking at some very cool technologies on the AR and VR side of things. And so those are some options that we're starting to kind of consider and figuring out how will it work within that digital environment. So I think for us, that will be the key, because that's where we're looking at in playing in that field, is that digital field. So it's keeping up with the it's keeping up with the technology.
Absolutely. And one final question before we wrap up. We've just got time to put this one in. Yesterday, we heard from Scott Varland at Jack Morton about gaming and what the events industry could learn from the way gaming communities have been built. I don't know if there's something that you guys have been talking about whilst I was on one of the other stages, but is this something that you guys are aware of, and is there inspiration that you can seek from those gaming communities?
Oh, yes.
Very much.
Very much so. Yeah, we again, just that's been top of mind in the last couple of weeks, and there's definitely synergies there between the event experience and gaming, and it's something we're extremely interested in. So yeah, that's a great question.
Thanks very much.
Gamification, streamers, lots of stuff. I was going to say this. Gamification, how streamers are doing, creating communities and the activity that they have. It's last year of not having events. You got your inspiration from all kinds of different places. So I think it's been really interesting for all of us, I'm sure.
Guys, we are out of time, I'm afraid, but I want to say my thanks to Anik, Heather and Julia from C2 International, and thanks to the team working with you guys at C2 International for preparing the video and some of the content that we were able to show prior to the session beginning today. And Nick Borelli, of course, from All Seated. Nick, thanks so much for joining this session today and ably chairing things while I was over on one of the other stages. Thanks to all four of you for being at Event Tech Live, and thanks for bringing the main stage content to a conclusion at the end of day 3, the third and final day of Event Tech Live. We hope to see you all again soon. Thanks very much.
Thanks.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Bye.